This week on the Where You At podcast, we're staying in San Diego. Actually, we're heading out to the beach. We're going to Pacific Beach, and I'm really excited about this week's podcast because I know that I'm personally going to learn a ton. This week's podcast, we're going to talk about sports entertainment, the business of sports, and social media marketing. Our guest is David Brickley. He attended San Diego State from 2007 through 2009. He is the CEO and owner of STN Digital. He's also the host of the Business of Social podcast. David, welcome to the Where You At podcast.
What's going on? How are you, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. David and I first met on a Zoom call during the pandemic with journalism and media studies, talking to students then. The world has gotten more back to normal since then. It's been fun to follow you a little bit through social media and your company, David. And so I'm super excited to learn more about it. And we're going to get into kind of how you got there. But let's start off with just letting people know, what is STN Digital? What are the types of things that you do?
Yeah, so we're widely considered the #1 social first marketing agency in sports and entertainment, especially here in the US. I think that's for a couple reasons. Number one, we've had the pleasure to work on pretty much every sporting event you can imagine. So March Madness, the Super Bowl, working at the league level, working at the team level, working at the sports network level. So anything you can really think about it in sports and entertainment, we've covered or had the opportunity to partner with these, really largest brands in the world. And then number two, we really have, in my opinion, the best talent in the industry. So the reason why a lot of these partners work with us is because they're able to really bolt on a world-class social media department overnight, using resources that they probably couldn't afford internally. And that's really where I think we've got our niche in the sports entertainment market, but also just being that seamless extension of these large brands that want to push the boundaries of social. And especially when tent poles come up, they just don't have the time to spend 4 hours in a whiteboard session to come up with the coolest, amazing social stunt for their upcoming release. So that's where we really come in and help out.
I feel like whenever you think about people who are entrepreneurs, they didn't just like wake up at age 30 something and become an entrepreneur. Most of them usually did something early stages of their life that sort of laid the groundwork, whether they realized it or not. What was the case for you, your earliest forms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's funny you asked this because I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur until this opportunity kind of hit me in the face. However, if I go back and look at myself in high school, I would buy throwback jerseys at the local swap meet and throw them on eBay and try to double down on those opportunities. I would burn mixed CDs for my friends and sell them for $5. And so going back and looking at it, I was always doing kind of a side hustle or trying to create my own destiny in a way. But, the way STN came about is really, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and I know we'll probably get into this, but that was my original goal, not so much to own a business or to own an agency. And a lot of amazing things happened that kind of pushed me towards that direction. So although I didn't, wake up as a purebred entrepreneur that wants to own his company since 5 years old, definitely as I look back, there were some entrepreneurial tendencies for sure.
All right, let's talk about that original goal.
Yeah.
Sports broadcasting. Tell us when it came about and when the things that you started to do to go down that path.
Yeah, so like a lot of, I guess, young men, I wanted to be a professional athlete. So my original goal was to make the NBA, as I'm averaging 5 points and 5 assists in my senior year of high school. I'm realizing I'm not an All-American. I got to go to a different direction. So what was funny in high school, though, a lot of my friends would play NBA 2K or NBA Live back in the day. And I'm like, hey, you guys play, I'll just announce it. So we would kind of turn the volume down and I would try to be funny and kind of do a deeper voice. Here's Bryant for 3 is good. So the Lakers up by 12, that type of thing. And my buddies were like, dude, you're actually pretty good at that. So that kind of got me thinking this could be an awesome way to stay in sports, something I really, really love. But at the same time, have a different career path and obviously making it to the professional level. So that was the original, I guess, epiphany. And then went to junior college, transferred to San Diego State for journalism. And the whole idea was really sports broadcasting and did a lot of stuff on campus as well.
The number of sports broadcasting careers that either were launched or were attempted via playing video games and broadcasting is really, really high. I hear it all the time. And I actually recommend to students all the time. I'm like, just do it while you're playing video games
Mhm.
because it's all about reps. And this way
Right.
you can have fun. And who cares if you screw up? You're just hanging out with your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So going to San Diego State, a couple things that I actually did worked with the athletic department. And back then, Mike May was the head of PR and all that. So, 2007 right away, worked on KCR Sports Radio, launched that department with a friend, and then went straight to the athletic department. Like, what are sports that you guys need help on? Back then, it was women's volleyball, it was softball, a little bit of baseball, but we were able to do play-by-play over a Windows Media Player stream, and we were able to have a lot of parents across the nation be able to tune in to see their kids because we were able to do that for free and kind of get the reps, like you mentioned. I remember doing some stuff for UCSD baseball as well. Got paid $50 for a play-by-play, but I had to learn all the players like in 24 hours, and it was always difficult, but it was so fun, man. Just getting the opportunity, like you said, to get those reps that wasn't really afforded to you maybe in the curriculum on campus.
So I'm glad you brought up volleyball, softball, because
Mhm.
for a lot of people who have aspirations of being a broadcaster, it's all about baseball, basketball, football, maybe
Yep.
soccer or something like that. But I tell people all the time, learn as many different sports as possible because there's fewer people trying to get those jobs. A lot of times they're even more appreciative that you're there because they don't get that type of coverage. And I'm wondering how doing those sports as a student has helped you have just a broader sense of all the opportunities that are out there to this day.
Well, that and also to your point, they are so appreciative of being covered that's where you're able to really talk to the star of the softball team. And after a huge comeback win, be able to get their reps too on the real time ability to like, what questions do I want to ask the star of the game? Seconds after they just hit a grand slam or what have you. So I think those are as a student, right? Like you're not going to probably be afforded that opportunity with basketball or football because that's being covered at the national level or obviously at the local level with news stations. But absolutely, I think you can be the reporter pulling the main star off the field, if you will, and that gets you the reps that you wouldn't otherwise get with some of the, I guess, more popular sports.
I want to start talking about what you did after college in a moment, but any other just memories from San Diego State, whether it's classes, fellow classmates, professors, just any other things that you look back on and go, wow, that was really pivotal in helping shape who I am now?
Yeah, when I look back at it, I think journalism media studies was very early on at that time. Professor Arsenault is one of my favorite professors that I appreciate and keep up to with this day. But I will say that the most amazing thing about going to San Diego State was finding people that had similar past or really liked the sports broadcasting genre, getting in those rooms with those people and like, how can we get better? How can we push each other? What are some events? Can we talk to the athletic department? Can we launch a sports broadcasting division of KCR student radio, things like that? And those reps that we got hosting a Thursday weekly sports show and launching a podcast and doing play-by-play for volleyball and softball, those were the things I remember most, more so than maybe the multiple choice test that I took in journalism 204, right? So I think, the world's your oyster for sure. And if you can find people on campus that have like-minded interests, that have a similar career path as you, it's incredible that that guy can be your camera guy. And then when they want to do something, you could be the camera guy or whatever it may be. But we went to local rental shops and asked if they can hook us up with a camera and a microphone back in the day for free because we're a student. And we asked 7 camera shops, 6 said no. One said, you know what, we're former SDSU grads. We got you. Just make sure you don't break it. So I think just what I remember most is really that's the entrepreneurship too. It's like, I want to get better at this and I want to create my own destiny. So how can I work with some others to make this happen?
When I look at your LinkedIn and I see the Ben Maller show, that makes me smile because while I never worked personally with Ben, I've sat next to him in a lot of press boxes and a lot of media scrums over the years.
Yeah,
And
he's a
he
great
is
guy.
literally and figuratively a larger than life individual.
Yep.
Maybe not
Yep.
as literally as much as he was at one time, but tell us about just learning radio and being a part of the Ben Maller show.
Yeah. So out of college, I had a demo reel. I had interviews with Kobe Bryant. I thought I was just going to be, drowning with offers, but obviously '09, the economy. But I sent my demo reel, which I thought had a lot of great material on it, to over 150 stations, both TV and radio across the nation. I got one callback. The callback was Montana for $22,000 a year. I said, I will take it. And I was the runner up to that job. So 0 for 150, and was able to, through like an internship, work out a part-time board operator position that I applied for KFI AM 640, which is more on the news side. And then that went to a part-time producer role, was able to parlay that into a part-time Fox Sports radio producer, and did that for 3.5 years. So yeah, Ben Maller, as you know, is overnight. So I got into the office at 8 p.m. and was there till 4 a.m. But just had so much fun because even though it was crazy hours and it was on the weekends and things like that, it was just, I was living the dream because I'm talking sports and I'm prepping stories for, the Lakers or whatever it may be, whatever the topic of the day was. So learned so much there. And it was just really, really fun getting out of college, being able to get right into Los Angeles as the main media market and then work nationally on radio. So
one more question about that, because
yeah.
I think the interesting part for me when I've done radio is my brain is still just wired. You're a journalist, it's objectivity, and I'm trying to think that I'm like Dan Rather or something. But when it comes to radio, especially sports talk radio, you need to have your facts right. You cannot straight be lying because people know, but it's all about being entertaining and theater of the mind. And I think that Ben is one of those guys who just really understands the ability to mix knowledge, facts with opinion, and doing it in an entertaining way.
I think talking nationally too about so many different topics and making that fun and interesting for even the novice that is, working the overnight type thing or driving a truck. It's like, I don't know what's going on with Wemby over in San Antonio and what the hype is about, but make it fun for me, or let's make this digestible. So especially nationally, you got to talk to a macro audience, make it make sense. I think Callan Collar does a great job of this, and Ben Maller does too. The analogies are really important to make sure things tie in together, and you can, again, talk to a macro, but also get more niche with people that know the inside jokes. So it's, I totally agree. It's definitely theater, and you just got to, what is it? Every 8.5 minutes, you got to entertain and keep the ratings and all that stuff. So it's super interesting.
I believe that next for you was Lakers Nation. Tell us how you got the job with Lakers Nation and what you did.
Yeah, so this actually happened right out of high school. So this was just a blog, totally something. It was called getgarnett.com when when I was first like 18, 19. Then it turned to LakerNation.com. And essentially it was a bunch of us Laker fans that volunteered our time to write about the Lakers. Back then, Lakers.com was very safe, very PR forward. They didn't talk about, obviously, and they still don't, trade rumors and, is Kobe going to leave? And like, can we get Garnett? And what if we traded Lamar Odom and Andrew Bynum for this or that? So that was really what fans wanted to sink their teeth into. And we were able to provide just that. So that's really how I learned to, live coverage games. And we would do podcasts after playoff games, and we would live tweet regular season games. And we would, blog in real time and all that stuff too. So that was just a bunch of Laker fans from LA. We all kind of got together, volunteered our time, had a bunch of writers and a bunch of volunteers that wanted to talk about Lakers and hone their craft. But that was an incredible platform for me, because even the podcast sometimes would get 5,000, 6,000 downloads, which was, rivaling that of maybe what Fox Sports Radio LA was getting with some of their podcasting at the time. So it was great. It was great to just, again, mostly volunteer. We got a few ads later on via our podcast and the website. We were able to make a little bit of money, but that was a great jumping part for me to be able to control my own destiny as well.
I feel like that time in the late 2000s, the early 2010s was a time that I didn't realize it at the time, but in retrospect was really pivotal with blogs, podcasts, live tweeting, social media, and just how all of these things just kind of came together really, really quickly. And the number of people who were kind of this, a little bit a sports fan, a little bit a journalist, maybe a little bit in the middle, who developed these followings, which continue to this day.
Yeah,
I think is fascinating. And I think it was really a time of like changing coverage, where it was no longer about just, we're going to give it to you objectively. This was like, no, we're fans, and we're going to lean into that we're fans. That doesn't mean we're always going to take the team's side on this. A lot of times we're going to be even more critical because we are fans. And I'm wondering if you can kind of just like Kind of explain more about like that time and sort of like how that's evolved the sports landscape.
I think the consumer is always going to win out. And I think we're seeing this even with streaming, right? As a sports fan, and you can appreciate this, it's difficult. Is it on Apple Plus? Is it on Peacock? Is it on Amazon Prime? Is it on YouTube TV? It's hard to even find our favorite sports games or where to watch the NFL playoffs. So now you're starting to see, right, some conglomerates merge together and joint ventures, and we'll probably go full circle. Because as a sports fan, DirecTV was the easiest route 10 years ago. Every single game was on my DirecTV, and now I have to go all these different places, which is causing confusion for the consumer. And I think back then, sports fans wanted to get updates on trade rumors. They wanted to get more detail inside the lives of the athletes, and that just wasn't available through print or through your local 10 o'clock newscast. So there was an ability there for, because new media and the internet was getting to a certain stage, that you can actually feed that need that sports fans wanted to do all day, every day, and be able to be updated. So I totally agree. I think, going back and looking at, 2000, I would say 5 through 2012 or what have you, was a pivotal moment where new media started to take over: YouTube, podcasting, blogging, and the sports fan was finally satisfied their hunger where maybe it wasn't there previously.
We're going to get to STN Digital in a moment, but
Yeah.
before we get there, now you look at the landscape in 2024, who doesn't have a podcast, right? Like, who doesn't have a YouTube series? And I still think that from the standpoint of students, do it, get the reps, practice, practice, practice. But I feel like it's so much harder to cut through the noise now, David, when it comes to getting established. And so, based on your experiences with what you've done and what you know about the market now, what is your advice in terms of whether it's just the next thing or how to cut through the avalanche of information that is out there now?
Yeah, I find that the mistake some people make is, hey, I'm just going to launch a podcast. And to your point, it's such a saturated market. By the way, the stats on that is 95% of podcasts die after the third episode, because as you know more than anybody, right? Like, it's all fun and games for the first three, and then you realize how much work is put into it. So a lot of people, every human wants to, I want to start a podcast with my best friend, and then they're like, oh shit, this is actually work. So that's kind of a funny, stat. But I would say, like going back to when I was coming out of college, there's white space somewhere. And right now it may be the 60-second wrap-ups on TikTok versus maybe the blog or the podcast that was so popular and maybe in a saturated market too. So like, going back to when I came out of college, print was saturated, or maybe you couldn't launch your own sports talk radio show. You couldn't launch your 10 p.m. newscast, but you could launch a blog. You could launch a podcast. You could launch a YouTube channel, which is relatively new. And all those things are still at your disposal now. But there's always something new. There's always something that other people aren't doing yet. Because I think if you look at the Fortune 500s, a lot of them are don't even have a TikTok strategy yet. So as a student, can you fill that niche where some of the traditional media outlets haven't even figured it out yet?
All right, let's get to STN Digital. Give us the background of how you got this idea and how you start to make this idea a reality.
Right. So going back to Fox Sports Radio, after 3.5 years, I thought I was ready for at least my, hour-long Saturday show that I can talk Lakers or do something for the station. My program director did not agree with that at that time. So I took destiny in my own hands. And what I did was I launched a YouTube back in 2011. I would use the multi-million-dollar Fox Sports Radio facilities overnight to host the show I wanted to host and just post it on YouTube. So, my program director and the Fox Sports people were kind enough to be like, yeah, as long as you don't break anything, just feel free to use our studio overnight. Nobody's in there anyway. Just watch out for the cleaning crew, what have you. And then I launched this YouTube channel. So back in 2011, there wasn't a lot of original sports talk channels. It was really early. So we had a YouTube partner rep. He's still a friend and a colleague to this day, but he helped us get on the front page quite a bit. We got a lot of subscribers. And then at that time, and I can get deeper into this if you want, but at that time, I was through a lot of different connections. I was able to reach out to Kobe Bryant and his team and say, hey, can I create YouTube videos for you on your YouTube, on your website, on your social media? And him and his team said, we would love that. So that really was the epiphany. Like I've reached out to my childhood hero, essentially, growing up an hour east of LA. I'm now making original content for Kobe Bryant every single week. And oh my God, if I can do this for other athletes, other sports teams, I can actually create my own destiny and not hope and pray that my program director gives me the opportunity that I think I'm ready for. So that was really the epiphany and the intoxicating feeling. Like, I cannot believe this just worked. What if I parlayed that into having it work more and more?
I cannot believe that David just asked,
Yeah.
do you want me to go into more detail about Kobe Bryant and your relationship with him? Yes,
Yeah, I'm happy.
please. You can spend as much time as you want, the
Yeah.
deepest of deep dives. But let's start with, how do
Yep.
you reach out to his people? I mean, look, oh yeah, I just reached out to his people. No, how
Mhm.
did you reach out to
Yeah.
his people to make this happen?
So this is what's good about, I think, karma too, right? You volunteer your time, blood, sweat, and tears into a Laker Nation volunteer effort. You become kind of like a staple in the community as a Laker fan expert, if you will. So we actually got reached out to by Matt Barnes' publicist, who was on the Lakers at the time, to cover his golf charity event. So I was broke as a joke. I rented a camera. I, got some gas money, went out to Malibu, covered the event, interviewed Matt, interviewed Ron Artest at the time, and just did it kind of to do a favor for that publicist. She then asked me, can you go cover Matt's twins are in school and they just made the honor roll and no press is coming? Can you do me a huge favor and interview the kids so I look good, and then I'll give you Matt for 10 minutes of a one-on-one interview? So I'm like, again, broke as a joke. Can I afford gas money to get out to Malibu? You know what? Let me do it. I can put it on LakerNation.com. This will, again, reps, right? It can build my resume, it can build my demo reel. And then a year goes by, so nothing really comes of that. And then I go to a boxing workout class, and I run into that same publicist, and I say, "Oh my God, how you been? How's Matt doing? Oh, Matt's doing great. Oh, by the way, I'm now Kobe Bryant's publicist." So I said, "Oh my goodness, I actually have a lot of ideas. Would you be open to hearing some of them? Like, email me tomorrow." And I emailed the idea, which was the Kobe Minute, which was a 60-second video weekly to talk about his on the court and off the court successes. Because if Kobe tweets or talks about his charity or the stuff he's doing off the court, it looks kind of pompous and egotistical. But if you have more of a news face updating the fans on all those things, it felt more genuine. So they said, "Oh my God, we need more social content. This is a perfect way to do it." And those videos were getting 300, 400,000 views, as you can imagine, because Kobe was tweeting it, put it on his Facebook, embedding on his website. So I like to say kind of all that blood, sweat, and tears and all that karma of doing favors and doing good things led to that opportunity.
What would be your advice when it comes to, you're working with someone like Kobe Bryant? You mentioned this is one of your childhood heroes,
Yeah.
and it's natural to be starstruck. It would be weird if you were not starstruck. How long did it take for you to get over that starstruck so that you can still do the job? And what would be your advice to other students in particular about how to get over being starstruck?
Yeah, so Kobe has such an interesting connection to me in my whole come up, because my first ever celebrity interview was Kobe Bryant as well. When I was at San Diego State, I covered a Maloof Money Cup, a skateboarding event in Orange County. Again, not a skateboarding fan, but can I get reps? Can I interview these skateboarders? Can I add this? Can I interview Joe Maloof and the owners of the Sacramento Kings at the time and build this for my demo reel? So Kobe shows up to this skateboarding event with his wife, Vanessa. And I'm like, I gotta at least ask him, like, shoot my shot here. So I went up to him and said, "Hey, can I get a quick interview?" He said, "Let's do it, kid." And I interview him. And what's funny is my friends at the time, like, how did you not freak out? How did you not get starstruck? Because I did all those reps with the KCR radio, with the softball players, all those different reps. I just went into David Brickley reporter mode. "Hey, sitting here with Kobe Bryant. So Kobe, just coming off the 2009 championship, how are you feeling? How is it?" Whatever I said at the time. But I just went into that mode because I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps interviewing other people on the spot. And I think that's the takeaway for anybody listening. Like, regardless if you're interviewing your mom, your friend, your roommate, or obviously, maybe a sports star on campus, all those are just reps. So when you do get that moment, you just kind of fall back into a character, which is the professional journalist that can just get this done.
Okay, so once you have fallen into this character, this professional
Yeah.
journalist character. Okay, so
Yeah.
now you're feeling good. Now you're working with Kobe. Explain just
Yeah.
the dynamic of like how you guys would work together, how you guys would collaborate, what he liked, what you recommended to him in order to create the best content.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would create these videos weekly. I would send it over to the publicist, and Kobe would actually approve it over text message. So I would also give copy suggestions in his voice, kind of try to be his ghostwriter. He would often maybe change a couple of words or what have you, but it was pretty easy. It was a 60-second video. It was pro Kobe, obviously, about he just scored 40. Oh, by the way, he just donated to this charity as well. And this has been your Kobe Minute. So I think it was pretty easy to get that stuff approved. The way I worked it out too, honestly, is like, hey, I'll do it for free as long as I can monetize on my YouTube channel. So the videos, and you could still see them to this day, they were on the STN TV YouTube channel, and I would monetize those because back then the 400,000 views would get me about $800 to $1,000 a video. So that allowed me to quit my part-time job at Yard House, bussing tables, because I was still working part-time at Fox Sports, because that money actually helped me pay my rent and things like that. So that was a little bit of entrepreneurial angle as well. It's like, you don't have to pay me $5,000 a month to make you videos, but you're going to get amazing content, high quality for free. Just let me monetize. And that was the relationship. So it worked out amazing.
What does STN stand for, by the way?
Yeah. So back then when we had the YouTube channel that I launched in 2011, it was Sports Talk Network TV. Because we launched the agency with the same STN acronym, so many people called us STN. We didn't want to lose that because it started to be known in the industry. So now we've kind of switched it. Now that we're 11 years in the game now, we call it second to none. So I really believe in sports entertainment. There's nobody that understands a sports entertainment fan better than we do. That would be kind of pompous to say year one, working out of my second bedroom in my apartment. But I think now we're safe to say that. So there you go.
When did you, okay, so you did this work with Matt Barnes, you did this work with Kobe. When do you start to evolve and go into multiple different directions where you start to see the groundwork of what the company is now?
Yeah, so we started the company April 2013. I started originally with two business partners, and we had Kobe as that credibility, right? So we immediately, and to answer your question about how's it work granularly, we got an Excel sheet and we put all 32 NFL teams on it. And we found contacts and emails and just went down the list. And originally what we did was, hey, we'd love to ask you for advice. We're starting this new company. Would love to see if you think it'd be a market fit or if you have any advice for us. And 7 people responded, 5 hopped on phone calls. Hey, if we ever bring this to a company, would you be open to seeing a proposal? Yeah, sure. I'd be open to it. So we did that across every single league. And we started working. Our first client in sports was Southern Mississippi University. Then it was Subaru of Glendale, a car, a dealership. Then it was the Vancouver Canucks. Then it was the Minnesota Vikings. And I think once we got the credibility of the Canucks and the Vikings, once you get into the NFL, oh, you work at the Vikings? Okay, you're legit. So I think the Kobe Bryant, that was the credibility to know like this guy and this company's legit. And then as we started to get these deals across different leagues, once you get one NFL team, when you have a call at the Patriots, well, if the Vikings trust them, I can trust them. So that was a huge part of our success, was getting those large logos early and having that be the credibility we needed to continue those conversations.
Describe for us. Okay, so you have like the Kobe Bryant Minute. Now that's a lot of social media things. Describe sort of like the evolution of the different content and what you did for different clients or how you position yourself. This is what we can do for you based on what your needs are.
What's really funny is I always forget this story, but I told it recently. The first couple months, we started in April, the official LLC. But prior to that, we were already starting to think about launching this company. You'll know this story because obviously Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast University, they beat us in the Sweet 16. But that whole Dunk City mantra was really national Cinderella story. We reached out to Florida Gulf Coast University and say, hey, we're this new company. We would love to help you on social media during this amazing historic run. They literally gave us the passwords to all their social. Facebook, Twitter. Can you imagine that happening today? But they're like, sure, if you want to tweet, you want to do your thing, here you go. Here's our YouTube credentials. And we posted live during the tournament, during the run, all the way until they lost, I think in the Elite Eight or what have you. But that was an example of, again, we can add that to our case study. Like, yeah, we work with Kobe Bryant. We actually worked at Florida Gulf Coast University during their historic run and the tournament this year. So those case studies were really able to allow us to get the credibility. And to answer your question more on like scope, Southern Mississippi University paid us $500 a month, and they got 10 social posts, 2 infographics, an analytical report, and an email newsletter, like a lot of stuff for a little amount of money. But they needed help creating more content and posting content on their feeds, because back then everybody had social media channels, but they didn't have consistent content going out. So that was a big white space. Like, sure, the Minnesota Vikings have a Instagram or they have a Facebook account, but they're only posting twice a week. How could they up that content? And that's where we really filled the need.
When and how does your company go from working from the spare bedroom in your apartment to, oh, we actually have a brick and mortar, we have a place, we have offices, we
Yeah.
have all of these things?
Good question. So I would say the first year and a half was definitely 18-hour days, drinking 8 cups of coffee, just like doing what it takes to start a company. The biggest moment for us was when we cold pitched Turner and NCAA on March Madness and said, we really think we can help you. And going back to the Laker Nation stuff, like we can live tweet this entire tournament with graphics and content and make sure you guys are showing up. And literally in 30 seconds after a game, we can post a high quality graphic that shows the final score. And they're like, how would you even do that? Like, well, we've already done it, like with different fan sites, et cetera, et cetera. So back then they said, let's do it. And that was like, wow, we just closed. I mean, just to be, it was like a $15,000 deal. We would have done it for 2,000, but they're like, hey, my budget's 15 grand. If you guys can do it, I'll hire you and I'll try this thing out. And that was like the epiphany. Like, we just made $15,000 to we pitched an idea that didn't exist. We just made 15 grand. Can we now go to other events and get 15 grand here, 15 grand there? And that was really, wow, this could be an actual company instead of maybe a couple deals that pay us 500 a month, right?
How many people work for your company now? How are they spread out? How do you kind of like divide up the work on these different events?
So I think full-time, we're right around 82 full-time employees. The way we're set up is we have our client service team. We have our production and creative team that produces all of our content from all the way from like a mini documentary all the way down to a simple social graphic. That's our creative and production unit. Client services team is the people that are the points of contact and make sure all the deliverables are hit, make sure that the client is well taken care of. And then, of course, we have our internal marketing and sales teams. We have our HR team. We have our finance team. But yeah, in terms of the day-to-day, our influencer and our paid teams sit underneath our client service teams, as well as our project managers and account managers. And then all of our designers, motion, graphic, iPhone creators, all those, they kind of sit under our production and creative teams. So that's how we serve our clients daily.
Let's talk about the culture of your company.
Yep.
When you set out, when you're looking to expand, when you're looking to hire, what are the things that you are seeking, whether it's from a resume, whether it's from their samples of their work, whether it's from interviews? What are you looking for when you bring someone on your company?
Well, I'm looking for if you've done it already, right? Because I think if you can, the term maybe hired gun is the wrong term, but even if you're a student or you're younger in your career, if you want to be a social media manager for us, do you have a side hustle where you've created a mini brand, even if it only has like 450 followers, but you're posting daily and you're using social best practices and you're posting things that are algorithm friendly? Can you show me something that you've already done? Or obviously, if we're hiring a more senior level person, oh, I worked at Adidas and I was their senior social media manager and I worked across James Harden and his shoe rollout. Okay, well, that immediately applies to some of our clients. So I would say the biggest thing for us is, can you show us that you've done it? And then through working assessments and culture questions, do you fit our culture? I always like to say, I like this term called selfless hero. I think if you're a selfless hero, you're able to not get too egotistical. There's not really an ego to you, and you want to help the team out. Like, how can I fit in? I know this isn't my job description, but it seems like the company needs me in this bucket this week. Can I help? Like, is there any way I can help the squad? And I really believe in that teamwork and like, can we all drive towards winning the game instead of everybody worrying about their individual stats, which I think is like, going back to sports, is just the epitome of how you win championships and things like that. So.
Your company was voted top workplace 3 years in a row by the San Diego Union Tribune. When you think about like starting a company and you're proud that you work with Kobe Bryant and that's exciting, then you see it evolve, but what does winning an award like that mean to you?
It means a lot because ultimately those are you could pay for some of those awards, but those awards in particular are surveyed by our team anonymously. So if they really thought that I was a jerk or they thought that we were full of, BS, they would rate us as such. So it means a lot that anonymously our team is like, hey, listen, this is an awesome place to work. I think especially in sports, and we bring a lot of people over from sports teams, and unfortunately, those cultures are work 80 hours a week, work 7 days a week, and if you don't want to do it, we'll pay somebody. There's thousands of interviews that we can go out and get somebody else. So when people come here and there's a mental health break, and if you work over 55 hours in a week, we have a time back day to kind of make sure that you keep your mental and you keep your mental health in a good spot so you can be the best version of yourself. Those things are like, are you kidding me? Like I get 4 weeks vacation. I get these different benefits. We have ERG groups and things like that to make sure people from diverse backgrounds feel seen and feel heard. So the two cultures or not, this is not Fox. I worked for an agency for a little bit before as a freelancer. And there's been some instances in my life where I've had terrible bosses that were assholes and jerks. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but they were. And I was like, I want to be the opposite of that. Like, I want people to come in excited and friendly and laughing and feel like they can really be the best version of themselves and not be scared or not be yelled at. It's just not my vibe at all. So I think I almost created a culture the opposite of some cultures I was in that was really toxic and bad. And it made me kind of create a culture that I wanted to be in for sure.
I don't know if this is a stretch as a segue, but I noticed what you guys have done recently with this year's March Madness, and that was the gambling focus about the number of student athletes who get approached by people who have some money in this game and the mental health that it's taking on them
Yeah.
and the problems with sports gambling. Speak a little bit more about what your company did to kind of come up with ideas of how we can spread the word about what's happening with sports gambling right now, especially with the athletes.
Right. So, so the NCAA has been a partner of ours for over a decade, and they came to us and said, hey, this is something that the president of NCAA is really big on, trying to get awareness out there about the problems with gambling. And also, I think what happens at that level, right, is like if you're a backup player on a basketball team or even baseball, and you have a roommate that can be on Prize Picks or what have you, and you can make a quick $500 and you're a college kid and you're kind of broke and you don't have NIL deals, I think you start to question those things. And that's what they want to make sure that people aren't taking those risks and affecting the team, but also, being in a situation where they get banned or they get expelled or whatever it may be. So the problem is like with that type of content, Josh, like from a PSA standpoint, that could be very like, shut up. Like, this is lame. This is coming from a very, an institution that just like is telling us, no, 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 be careful. So we tried to find ways like, how can we make this land that doesn't come off across that way? Because I think a lot of PSAs seem like, oh, of course, the NCAA is telling us once again, we can't do something, but is there a way that we can talk in their language, speak in more terms that are more educational and we got your back rather than this is yet another thing you can't do via the NCAA. So we were super proud of that campaign. I think there's more to come on how we can just keep the kids educated so they don't fall into those traps, right?
Any other campaigns, whether it was recent or a few years ago that I have not brought up that you're super proud of, that you think have an interesting backstory that we can really learn from a lot?
Well, we were the marketing agency of record for Snapdragon, which sits behind you in your virtual background. So that was amazing working with JD Wicker and the entire team cross campus as well with President De La Torre and things like that. That was just great, just being an SDSU alum. And I like to say, like, my parents paid for an SDSU education. And then 10 years later, SDSU paid me much more than my, education costs to be the expert to lead them through that vision from a marketing standpoint. So that was like a kind of a pinch yourself moment. Had a lot of Aztec grads here on our staff. So we were able to work on that. And literally what we like to say is like, how do you make a piece of dirt exciting? And so for so long, right, it was dirt. It was maybe some foundational elements, concrete, a couple posts. But how do you tell that story where you celebrate what happened at Qualcomm and SDCC, but you start a new era with Snapdragon and get the entire community excited? We started off, I think, with a focus group, and only 21% of the region even knew a stadium was coming. And by the end of it, 99% of the region was excited and knew exactly what was coming. So that was a really awesome event. And kudos to JD as well. I mean, he wanted to go national and put SDSU on the map. So at the national championship, it was Georgia, Bama, and Indy, and we had SDSU billboards on the freeway. We had SDSU, marketing elements in the airport as you arrive. So people are walking in like, this is Georgia, Bama, and I have all this San Diego State stuff hitting me in the face. But that was a great stunt where it's like, oh, don't get it twisted. I know you're here for Bama and Georgia, but San Diego State is somewhere you need to focus on. And oh, by the way, we ended up going to the national championship in basketball shortly thereafter. So, I mean, SDSU has never been more primed to be on the national map than it is right now.
I just love the idea of taking a big swing like that, and seeing what comes from it. Whether that's you and your company, whether that's JD and San Diego State, just the idea of let's take big swings, so what if you miss, let's take big swings in life.
100%. I think so many people are afraid to do that. Like, what is the actual ROI of something like that? Can you actually prove it the next day? But, you start stacking enough of that stuff up and all of a sudden, just the anecdotal evidence is like, yeah, I hear didn't San Diego State like build an arena recently? Like, I think they're crushing out there out west. Like, that's so important for brand awareness and credibility. And you saw what happened with the after the national championship appearance too, what it did to just San Diego State applicants, right? Just like historic applicants. And I think the number was about the national championship got about $450 million in equivalent ad revenue and awareness. You can't beat that stuff. So it's awesome to see that for sure.
Well, you've been involved with San Diego State in a lot of different ways, not just working on Snapdragon and the university. Give us some more insights into just staying connected, speaking, mentorships, different things that you do to give back to the university.
Yeah. So I remember when I was a student, what inspired me the most was seeing somebody that came and graduated from San Diego State that made it out in the market and can come back and say, here's what I did. That was always so inspiring. I think that goes for a lot of people in different backgrounds. If you could see somebody that was in your seat and see someone where you want to go to. I remember when I was at school, I wanted to have a mentor. And at the time, Spiro Ditas, who I'm sure you know, he's an announcer for CBS, NFL on CBS, but he was the former radio play-by-play guy for the Lakers. He was 26 years old at the time when I was in college. And I'm like, how the heck did this dude get the play-by-play gig at 26 for the LA Lakers? And he was a Greek as well. I'm part Greek. So I reached out to him like, hey, I'm a fellow Greek. You're exactly in the seat I want to be in one day. Can you mentor me? And he did. And that was so amazing to get that insight and get that advice. And he was the one that pushed me like, hey, man, work for free. Hey, man, like, try to see if Fox Sports will let you like do a show at night and use their facility. Like, he was really big on, I promise you, if you can get these reps, it's going to pay off long-term, and be patient with this process. So, that's one thing. And then, yeah, I come back to campus a lot to speak to students to hopefully inspire that. And what's really cool is, there's been students that I talked to that I end up hiring as well a couple of years down the road. And there's one of our supervisors who's crushing it right now. She always reminds me that I came and spoke to her class like 5 years ago, and she kind of fell in love with the company, applied, and the rest is history. And she's been promoted 3 or 4 times now. So that's pretty cool to kind of give back to state, because obviously without them, I wouldn't be where I am as well.
Your story just reminded me of something that I'd forgotten about, which was when I was in school in the 90s, and I'm at the Daily Aztec, and the sports editor is probably Eric Winter at the time. He reached out to Buster Olney to have Buster come to speak to our staff. Now, at the time, Buster Olney was the number 2. He was the backup Padres beat writer. And so we felt like, well, that's the only person that we could probably get to come speak to our class, the Padres number 2 writer. Like, I don't know if Nick Canepa's going to come talk to us, or if Ed Graney will, or if Tom Krasovic will, but we can probably get Buster Olney to come out here and talk to us. And he was great. He spoke to our entire sports staff. And then afterwards they were like, hey, Buster, you need to talk to this guy, Josh, because he's the beat writer for San Diego State baseball. And so I got to talk to Buster, and I just remember like just how much that helped me and just kind of gave me just like this vision. And then as I started to work more in baseball, I would see Buster and I would talk to him. And even it's just, hey, there's a friendly face in this press box who is now, he was at the Baltimore Sun, then he was at the New York Times, and now he's at ESPN. He's been ESPN forever. And so it's just like, oh, okay, there's a friendly face that I know, and this person helped him inspire me. And so I always tell students, look for those opportunities to meet people, but then also pay it forward. Do that for somebody else as soon as you can as well.
The number one piece of advice I always give is I think so many humans have self-limiting beliefs. Like Kobe Bryant probably gets 10,000 emails a day asking to create content for him. I'm not going to email him. Like, okay. So with that attitude, yeah, you're not going to be able to get that opportunity. But I'm amazed how often people don't shoot their shot essentially because they make this story up in their head, like Buster Only would never come, or like, or whatever it may be. And like, even someone like me as a CEO, you think that I would be getting countless emails, one a day, where someone's like, can I pick your brain? Can I get your advice? Can I get your thoughts? It doesn't happen. I think everybody assumes I'm too busy. I don't want to bug them, what have you. So even at the celebrity level, even at the NFL level, whatever it may be, I'm not going to, there's no way I can ever work with the Lakers. There's no way I can ever work with, but we had the audacity to be like, let's ask. And if we go 0 for 32, who cares? And I think and I think that comes from my parents. Like, they did a good job of brainwashing me. Like, you can do whatever you put your mind to type thing, which, kudos to them. But I just never had those like, oh, I'm sure that they get blown up and I don't want to, I'm sure they're busy. Like, dude, if they're busy, they won't answer you, but you at least got to shoot your shot. And you'd be amazed what happens if you just like reframe your mindset into why not? If I don't get a response, I'm in the exact same situation I am right now. So, but the 1% chance they get back to me or what have you, then I'm in a really good spot. So
I love the word audacity. That's just a great,
yeah.
great word. Tell us about your podcast, the Business of Social podcast. Tell us what you do with it and where people can listen to it if they want to learn more.
Yeah, we talked earlier about Ben Maller and radio. There's something so intimate, I think, to you're working out and you put a podcast on and they're inside your head, the voices, and it feels like you're a fly in the wall, like listening to a conversation. I've always loved that part of it. So I've been podcasting since, '05, essentially, like on and off, whether it was Lakers or Southern California sports or San Diego State, or an entrepreneur podcast. But this one in particular talks to the C-suite across sports and entertainment brands to get advice, insights, best practices about the industry. And I learn something every single show. So it's kind of like it's something for me where I can really be able to pull and learn from. But also what I hear from a lot of my clients and a lot of my colleagues, like, hey, that show is so helpful because it was so cool how the VP of social over at Paramount said this, and that, and I'm able to apply that at my brand or my company as well. So it's super fun. I'm like a constant learner. And to your earlier point about reaching out to a Buster Only, that never stops, right? Now I'm reaching out to agency owners that have $100 million in revenue and like, how'd you do it? And like, how'd you stay profitable? And what were the biggest parts of scaling that you had to overcome? I'm asking those questions just like you did as a student. How did you become the beat writer for the Padres? So I just love learning, growing, networking, talking like this, and putting it out on a platform where it gives value to the community too. It makes me feel good as well.
Along those lines, let me go back to something that you said earlier that I wrote down. A YouTube partner rep. What is a YouTube partner rep? How do you find one? And how does a YouTube partner rep help you?
Yeah, so back then, because we were one of the only sports original content creators, YouTube, whether I don't know if they reached out or we reached out to them, but they said, hey, if you ever have any issues with monetization, you have any issues with YouTube, or you want to learn best practices. So we got invited to a few YouTube seminars, and we had that guy we can go to that would partner with us. So I think now you have to have a certain amount of subscribers to even ask YouTube to have a point of contact that you can reach out to on a first name basis. A lot's changed since 2011. But I do think, again, even the audacity to ask that, like, hey, I'm a newer YouTuber. I just crossed 1,000 subscribers. I would love to learn best practices. Do you guys have any materials, any free webinars, anything I can do to be a better YouTuber and learn the algorithm better? I think you'd be surprised that potentially either within the YouTube community and other YouTubers that maybe are at 100,000 subscribers can help you make a connection, or reaching out to YouTube directly and kind of seeing where all that is.
When it comes to algorithms, I feel like we just live in a world in which the algorithms just control our lives, where we're always trying to figure out what's algorithm friendly and the algorithm.
It changes every 3 months, man.
Yeah, that's my question is how do you and your staff understand, learn, figure out how it's changing and how you need to tweak what you do because of those changes?
Well, that's why I think we're so popular in terms of being partners with these large brands is you have to be a practitioner. You have to be inside the platform almost every day to say, oh, they just released a new feature. Oh, interesting. So videos under 45 seconds now seem to be getting more push than they did before. Or like, oh, the For You page is really pushing this type of content. What if we tried this and A/B tested that? It's just a constant, we call it like a science, right? Because you're constantly, and no different than if you look at other mediums back in the day, like television. NBC was trying to move different shows around to try to affect the Nielsen ratings and what's our lead in and what should be the first scene and what should be the cliffhanger and all those things were just a science to try to keep ratings high and to get more advertisers. And there's no different with social. You have to be inside these platforms, be a practitioner of your craft, so you know when these features and these different algorithms are slightly shifting, so you can jump on them early. But yeah, I think the answer is that you can't just go to one source or follow a newsletter. You have to really make sure you have people on your team, even me myself. I posted an Instagram reel this morning while I was like in bed, just like learning what's working, what's not, and trying things out so you really can speak to it when a campaign comes up.
All right, we're going to start to wrap things up here momentarily, but anything else that I should have asked you that I forgot to ask you that you think is interesting to this whole conversation about just what you've learned, what your company does in order to help guide all of us as we learn more?
What comes to mind for me? I think the biggest thing we really touched on is the audacity to ask. I think, wherever you want to be, I would really pull up a Google spreadsheet and name everybody that's in the seat you want to be in. That goes for someone like me currently in my career. But if you're a student and you want to be a sports radio talk show host, literally type out the top 100 or search for it on Google or use ChatGPT to help. But ultimately, go down the list, find contact, and reach out to every single one of them. And you may not get Colin Coward, you may not get Dan Patrick, but maybe Ben Maller's down for a 30-minute call. Or maybe as you go down the list, some more Ben Higgins at ABC 10, good dude, sports director here in San Diego. He was actually somebody to shout him out. While I was in college, he took a look at my demo reel. He provided feedback, just out of the kindness of his own heart. So I think guys like you and I know that people did that for us when we were coming up. So we're more than happy to do it for kids coming up as well. But again, I just think like, don't just reach out to one person and get defeated. Literally write out a list of 100 people, reach out to all of them. And I guarantee you, if you list out 100 sports talk radio show hosts across the country and you email or DM all of them, I promise you at least one is going to hop on a 30-minute call with you. I just guarantee it. So it's really about the work and the patience to make that happen.
We like to finish off this podcast by bragging about other San Diego State alums who are making us proud. You've already mentioned that you have quite a few who work for your company. Yeah. You can mention as many as you want who work for you or others that you know. So the floor is yours.
Oh, interesting. So some of the students that I mentioned that I spoke to and they ended up working here, Gabby Swartz also worked inside the athletic department with Steve Snall back in the day. So it's kind of interesting that she ended up being one of the account managers a little bit during the Snapdragon run. Sammy Mendoza is one of our senior directors of client services, San Diego State alum that is here. I feel bad because I'm missing. William Riggins is our senior director of creative. He did a lot of the creative at Snapdragon. He's a San Diego State alum. Robert on our team too is our art director. He was so there's a lot of San Diego State alums here at STN. So I'll give them the shine. More so than maybe the famous alums that are out there in the industry.
I'm going to add two more to the list since we spent a lot of time talking about radio as an early background for David. Chris Ello attended San Diego State in the 80s. I remember going through the Daily Aztec archives and first seeing his name. And Chris has done play-by-play for a variety of different places all over San Diego, Southern California. He does women's basketball for San Diego State. He hosts a talk show with Tony Gwynn Jr., Chris and Gwen. Yeah. And so Chris is another guy he can write, he can talk, he can give opinions, he can do play-by-play. And then Jim Russell, somewhat of a recent alum, not brand new, but Jim Russell works for San Diego Sports 760, another San Diego State alum. Annie Halbrin, Marty Caswell. There's quite a few San Diego State alums who have worked or currently are working across San Diego State sports radio.
Absolutely, man. I think there's the people that are hungry and want to better their craft on campus and use the Daily Aztec, use KCR Radio, use the athletic department to outside of just the curriculum of your journalism degree or of your media studies degree. Those people seem to be the ones that make a big difference once they get out of school.
All right, David, this was super informative. I learned a lot. I was taking notes constantly and just really enjoyed the conversation, learning more about you and your company. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for the opportunity, man. Go Aztecs.
That was David Brickley. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm the host of Where You At. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.